I started becoming really excited in, like, was it like 2007 when a certain young man from Chicago announced his bid for presidency. And as you know, the excitement was contagious, and it caused you to think, what more can I do?
Yeah.
How else can I be impactful?
Yeah.
How else can I get other people in the community excited to do this work? So I volunteered on the campaign and was part of the policy committee, the Native Americans for Obama policy committee, helped to draft some of the education policy and what his priorities would be there for Native Americans. And I just stayed in contact and knew that I wanted to become the Commissioner for Administration for Native Americans.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Native Edge. I'm Chris James. Where are we today, Michaela?
We're still in DC.
Still in Washington, D.C. We've had a great week here in D.C. thus far. A lot of work. Louis Lau's here in the room from our comms team. Hey, Louis, we were at the NCAIED had an event. Tell us a little bit about what that NCAIED. Oh, he's not mic'd up. So we went. So NCAIED had a great tax event talking about some of the bills that they were working on. Our great partner Corey Blankenship was there, of course, with a lot of. Oh, he's putting on a mic. Now we're putting him on a spot. Louis Lau, everyone. Give us a little bit about what we did for the NCAIED.
Yeah, NCAIED's been working hard on a tax bill, a tribal tax bill, for a long time now. It's been a decades-long process to get it right, but they had a briefing yesterday with some tribal leaders and some of their board, including their chairman, Rodney Butler, who's a good friend of the National Center. So that was in the Capitol Visitors Center, and so I made a stop there. I was trying to solicit some more guests for the podcast, but we've got a good lineup already, so we're happy with that. And then Chris had a couple Hill meetings around that, so it's been a good couple days.
We had a great escort too. Well, you didn't get escorted, but Kate and I got escorted from the Hart Building by my 20-year-old son, who's interning for Mark Kelly. So he gave us a little bit of an escort. We got on the train.
In between posing with a hot dog, right?
Yeah, he was with, yes, they had a big event. My son has learned to go to all the receptions on the Hill, and he actually was with Senator Kelly at the National Hot Dog.
It's the hot dog lunch sponsored by the American Meat Institute, better known as Big Meat. You got Big Oil, Big Pharma. You also got Big Meat. That's DC. You got to lobby for everything.
Lobby for everything.
Yeah, DC, I've been in your son's shoes before. I interned when I was in college a couple times in DC, and it's a pretty expensive city, but if you're smart and you do it right, you can get a lot of free stuff.
A lot of free food.
So
a lot of
hopefully Yargo is doing it right. So.
He's rocking and rolling, and just a great opportunity. He's with a number of interns from Arizona, so great opportunity working. I would encourage anyone that's thinking about summer internships and wanting to do policy work in Washington, D.C., talk to your senator or representatives, because they do summer interns every month. But that is not what we're here to talk about today, is it, Michaela? No. I am so excited about today's podcast because there's very few people in your life that you meet and you continue to have over a decade-long relationship with, or friendship, or colleague. And it's, I read a statistic, when you know someone over a decade, you're going to be friends for them for life.
Oh.
So I am honored to have Lillian Sparks Robinson here on the podcast today. Welcome, Lillian. Why don't you introduce yourself, and then we can get right into it.
Well, thanks, Chris. Hello, friend.
Hello.
I'm so pleased to be here with you and with the team. As you mentioned, my name is Lillian Sparks Robinson. I'm a member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe. I'm also Gala and African American, and I have been in DC. It's funny because when I first started my company, I was saying, nearly 20 years I've been doing this work, and now it's like nearly 30 years.
Wow.
So time flies, and it's been quite an adventure and a journey. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, which back in the day we used to be able to say, which is like 45 minutes away, but now it's a good 90 minutes away, just given all of the traffic for whatever reason that flows in between the two cities. And lived here in the nation's capital for a long time before I moved back to my hometown of Baltimore after I got married and raising my family there. But I'm happy to be here visiting with you. We talk regularly, but this will be the first time I think our conversations will be recorded, so we'll have to be careful of what we say. Yes.
Well, it's amazing because you and I met when you were working in the Obama administration. I was working in the Obama administration. You were a Senate confirmed political appointee for administration for Native Americans. I can't wait to talk about that, but we're actually going to go a little earlier.
Okay.
So talk about your, so you grew up in the Baltimore area. Where did you go to college?
So I went to Morgan State University, which is a historically Black college and university. It is the national treasure, that's what we call it, because it has been designated as a national treasure. Yeah. It's located in, again, my hometown of Baltimore. And that's actually where both of my parents finished. So they met at the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League. People don't always realize Penn's Ivy, but they met there, got married at Penn on campus, and then they moved to Maryland and finished at Morgan. Wow. So that's where I went to school. I started off as a scholarship recipient to study electrical engineering.
Okay.
And I'd say the first semester of my junior year, I knew it wasn't for me, but it really took me that long to publicly admit it, front face, say to my parents, like, I can't continue to do this. And my mom's response was like, took you long enough. We knew this wasn't for you. And immediately changed my major to political science. Wow. And from there, went to law school at Georgetown here in DC, and that's how I began my journey here.
And what made you decide to do the law school? Because I love lawyers. You're probably the 10th lawyer we've had on the podcast. Okay. I surround myself with legal folks. I am not a lawyer, but what motivated you to jump into law school?
So initially I thought I was going to be a criminal defense attorney. And the reason being is one of my political science professors, who was a mentor, had said, Lillian, if you go into criminal defense, you will always have a client because there are lots of criminals out here. Yeah. So I went into law school thinking that was the avenue I was going to take. But really, in the background, things were already shifting for me. Yeah. When I was in high school, I was selected to be one of the Maryland interns for, so our General Assembly in Maryland is 90 days. Yeah. And high school students rotate, but you have to be nominated. It's a whole process. Yeah. But I was one of those students. And so I got to see for the first time up close and personal how laws are made, how policy is shaped and formed, and how that impacts real lives. Yeah. Then when I went to law school, Morgan, did my weird shift with the engineering background. But when I changed to political science, they had a program where I could intern again, but in a specific office and not just be a page. And I got a chance to do that he was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee at the time, and was invited to come back. A professor at Morgan was one of our state delegates, and asked if I would come back the next year. He would create the program and I could get additional credit. So I did that. So it really allowed me to become more engaged. And you would have thought naturally in my mind, I was like, well, this is where I want to go in public policy and in advocacy. But it wasn't until my last year of law school where I participated in the legislative law clinic. And there I got a chance to see how it was done on the federal level. And so my journey to law school was based off of my experience doing this state level advocacy and just knowing I wanted to take that further and learn the legal piece as well. And once I was in law school, realizing that I wanted to do advocacy as a career. Wow. So.
That's amazing, and Georgetown's what a great institution to go there too. So from now at this point too, one thing that I know about you, but a lot of people don't know, you got into Miss Indian World. Is that when was that? When did that occur, and how did that occur?
Sure. So I grew up as a competitive fancy dancer. I like from tiny tots through adults was always traveling to powwows and competing, and from there like learned about the Miss Indian World pageant. And it's held at the time the largest powwow in North America at the Gathering of Nations in Albuquerque, New Mexico, every April. And I knew how I would be able to get to go to the gathering is if I told my mom that I wanted to run for Miss Indian World. And so I made that announcement, and like my mom normally does, she just goes, okay, let's do it, let's go for it. So my parents were incredibly supportive. And when I ran for the title, I was in my second year of law school. So wasn't really sure what to expect or what was going to happen. All of the other contestants were representing their tribes or different organizations. I was one of two, there were 25 contestants, one of two where we were just coming as ourselves. And so throughout the 4 or 5 days of competition, there's interview, public speaking, essay, dance, talent. And at the last night, they crowned Miss Indian World. Yeah. And so when they announced me as the best at best interview, I got the best interview award. I was thrilled. I was like, wow, I'm walking away with something. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And then when they announced me as Miss Indian World, I was very much in shock. And so was my family. And I would just remember, I think it didn't hit me until I saw my mom running down the stairs and she was crying. And then it just like all of the emotions came through. And I realized though, my family had been preparing me for this. And this wasn't really a reflection of the work that I've done, but a reflection of all the love and support that had been poured into me up until that moment. So my last year of law school, I carried the title of Miss Indian World.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. And did you have to travel or did you do things with that while you're balancing school as well?
I did. Yeah. And so I remember my mom and dad asking if I wanted to defer my last year or did I plan to carry the title and continue going to school. And I told them I was going to continue school. I didn't want to put it off any longer. I was ready and eager to graduate. Mm-hmm. And so we just built my schedule around leaving like on Friday evenings to travel and coming back Monday mornings. And my first class was Monday evening. Yeah. So Monday evening, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, really building my school schedule and classes those days and then traveling the other time. I don't know how I did it, to be honest with you, because at this point in my life, as you know, as soon as something changes, or if I have a free, I'm taking it. Like I'm not looking to jam pack, but that's the beauty of youth is that you're able to do, run on fumes and still be excited about the next adventure.
Well, and also inspiring others. I mean, I'm sure because you were out talking to groups, you were out, just talking about your life and people. What an inspiration. People are like, oh, look at her. And you're on top of this, you're balancing school. So, I mean, that I'm sure there's thousands of people that were like, wow, I want to be like her one day. So I think that's amazing too.
I hope so, because I always say, if I can do it, you can do it. Yeah. I wasn't born with any particularly super special gifts or talents that allowed me to excel better than the next person. Certainly I was born with certain privileges that gave me an advantage. But when I look at just what I have with me, we can all cultivate and nurture that within ourselves. So
that's amazing. So you graduated law school. What was your next adventure in life? Sure.
So when I graduated law school, all of my law school friends had these 6-figure jobs lined up at big firms. And I was going into the bar, studying for the bar without any offer. I wasn't interviewing. I think I was just so focused and consumed with like ending my years in Indian World and graduating and taking the bar that I didn't put in the same time and effort in looking and securing a job. But I wasn't worried because I knew that Tunkashila had a plan for me, and I leaned in on my faith. And so I leaned away from fear and leaned into faith, and I focused on the bar. And once I completed the exam and was waiting for the results, that same week, I received a call from a friend that was part of the Native American Bar Association and said, hey, Lillian, I know the bar was this week. I hope you did well. By the way, DC Bar is meeting if you're interested. And so I came, and when I walked in, someone else had recognized me and said, hey, this is Lillian. I think she just took the bar last week. Where are you working? Do you have a job? I was like, I don't. And so she said, well, everyone, she needs a job. So if you know of anything, let her know.
Yeah.
Then that weekend, I went to a powwow, and someone had recognized me from the DC Bar Association meeting, the Native American Bar Association, and said, hey, if you're still looking, that woman right there is Jackie Johnson. She's in charge of the National Congress of American Indians. You should introduce yourself. And so I did. I went over to Jackie and I introduced myself. She gave me her card. I called her on Monday, interviewed on Wednesday, got an offer that Friday. And so I knew that this was where I was supposed to be to continue my advocacy for tribal communities and sovereign nations and those that just need a voice here in the DC area.
So working with NCAI, that must have been a great experience. Working with Jackie and during that time, all of shifting in policies and everything. Talk a little bit about that experience as well.
It was great. And so my parents, I just love them because they always supported me and trusted the decisions that I made for myself, because I think they knew they gave me the tools to make good, sound decisions. But they were saying like, well, what is your salary? And at the time it was like $44,000. Yeah. And so I was like, $44,000. And my dad looked at me like, wow, that is what we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in law school for. That's what okay, that's fine. Yeah. He said, but I trust you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And what I was able to walk away with was an experience that was so much more valuable than the six figures, again, that my peers were making. While they were in the dungeons of the firms, digging through evidence and just filings and doing a ton of, really mundane tasks and writing, I was traveling to Geneva, Switzerland, helping to represent tribes at the UN.
Wow.
I was at the Organization of American States. I was drafting congressional testimony for tribal leaders.
Yeah.
I was traveling with them. I was visiting communities. I was out there seeing the work that was being done. And that translated into something I think much more valuable than what could be sitting in my bank account. It translated into allowing me to grow as an advocate and into leadership. And I really, really enjoyed my time at NCAI. We were very small at the time. I think there were just 2 to 3 of legislative associates, 1 LD. I mean, the staff could fit, in 15 offices and still have room. So. Yeah. It's imploded since then, and I love to see the work that's being done and to be able to point to it and say, I was once part of that.
Yeah, that's amazing too. What a great journey. And I also like, that was such a risk to not go for the big corporate, lawyer job. I mean, to sort of shift, but the passion behind that shift. So you're definitely a risk taker because, hey, yeah, I'm doing something, but it's because I want to do it instead of going after the dollar, and I just love that. I think what a great lesson. A lot of times we fall into jobs where the biggest goal is prestige or money, but it seems like at this point of your life, the motivation was really support. Let me use all of what I've learned and put it to good use.
Yes, that's true. And as you're saying that, Chris, I realize the reason I was able to take a lot of those risks. I think people take risks like that for 2 reasons. 1, they don't have a choice. Yeah. This is it. It's all or nothing. Mm-hmm. Or 2, they have the ability to do it because there's a safety net underneath them. And I fell in the latter category. Yeah. It wasn't a do or die for me. It was I had the advantage of being able to choose something I cared and loved about because I had such a strong support system in my family and in my parents that allowed me to take risks without fear of falling or failing.
Yeah. So what was your next step in your career?
So from NCAI, I was recruited to apply for the executive director for the National Indian Education Association.
Okay.
And the first time I was asked, I declined because I just didn't feel I was ready. I had only been at NCAI for 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And I just thought there was still a lot to learn. But a friend had said to me, well, Lillian, when somebody asks us to do something, we have to honor them by doing that, even if you think you're not going to get very far. And I thought that was so big of her because she was applying for the job. And so when I told her they asked me, she was like, well, you have to apply too. Yeah. So I did. And I was asked for an interview. And I knew they were interviewing 3 people. And I spent a lot of time just studying and preparing, which is how I've always approached the next big thing in life is to really prepare myself. I don't believe in winging it. I do believe in proper preparation.
Yeah.
And so I looked at like budget, at finances, at what nonprofit organizational leadership looks like, at staffing, at HR, all of the things that an ED has to, as you know, take under their wings, at fundraising, at event planning, board relationships. And so I went into that interview, and as I do before I do all my interviews, said a prayer and just asked for my best representation to come out, my best self to be represented. And I was offered that job at 28 years old as the executive director for NIEA.
Wow.
And learned so much while I was there, including, how to be an advocate versus being a lobbyist, how to get your membership behind an issue, how to impact appropriations, how to train your board to both be successful spokespeople for the organization, but also fundraisers. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed the work there. And my biggest accomplishment at NIEA was championing the Esther Martinez Native American Languages Act, which I later got to implement as commissioner for ANA.
Wow, that's amazing. All those lessons learned about nonprofit work, because nonprofit work is grueling at times. Where and every nonprofit I've started or worked on, you were wearing so many hats. So you're like you said, you mentioned some days you're fundraising, some days you're public speaking, some days you're often on other boards.
Yeah.
How was that balance for you? You're still pretty new in your career. So in your late 20s, you're doing all this. How did you balance that? At the time?
Sure. So I didn't have a lot of other obligations or responsibilities at the time. I was still, single. I wasn't a mom. I was able to really pour myself into my career and my aspirations. And I really found mentors that organically just took me under their wing, and I learned as much as I could from them. And I spent as much time as possible just preparing me for whatever was going to be next in life. And so I welcomed every opportunity.
Yeah.
And when opportunities didn't exist, I created them. Yeah. And so that's what I really encourage young people to do is if there's an opportunity, don't doubt whether you have the time or the commitment. If you are single and you're not a parent, now is the time to do it. You don't need the extra experience. You don't need 10 years under your belt before you think you're ready to join this board. Do it now, because you're going to develop skills and relationships that will carry you through your next position. And that's really what I took advantage of in a way that allowed me to grow and learn. And hopefully I'm doing that now.
That is such great advice, not only for young people that listen to this show, but also for business owners. We have a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs who are thinking, risk takers are thinking, I want to get to my next level. How do I do it? Well, you just gave them a little playbook right there. That's pretty awesome. So what was your next move?
So I was at NIEA, and as a lot of us, yourself included, I started becoming really excited in, 2007 when a certain young man from Chicago announced his bid for presidency. And as you know, the excitement was contagious, and it caused you to think, what more can I do? Yeah. How else can I be impactful? Yeah. How else can I get other people in the community excited to do this work? So I volunteered on the campaign and was part of the policy committee, the Native Americans for Obama policy committee, helped to draft some of the education policy and what his priorities would be there for Native Americans. And I just stayed in contact and knew that I wanted to become the Commissioner for Administration for Native Americans. That didn't just happen. It wasn't just a coincidence. I really laid the groundwork because I knew if he was going to be the first Black president, I wanted to be part of that as well. Yeah. And made sure I stayed involved. I stayed connected, but I did the work. A lot of it isn't just who you know. You have to prove yourself once you get in there.
Yeah.
And so when they began doing a call for, nominations for certain positions, and, some you can apply for, some people ask you for, the very high level ones, of course, they have who they want, but some of the other ones, you can apply or you can start to make it known, like, I'm interested in this position. Yeah. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And went through a series of interviews and was, made my rounds on the Hill to Senate confirmed position. And so had to meet with a lot of offices, had to answer a lot of questions written. And I said it was like 112 short essays I had to write.
Wow.
That's what it felt like to answer all of the survey. Went through the hearing and then was voted on and confirmed by the United States Senate, sworn in by Secretary Kathleen Sebelius.
Wow. That's pretty amazing because not a lot of people go through that experience, and it's pretty grueling. So, and you really had to be strong as a person because they're asking you questions or putting in the spotlight. Who knows what they could ask you just, randomly. You talk about how you prep for your you're prepping for an interview. How did you prep for a congressional hearing? Because that's a tough one.
It's a tough one. So in addition to prayer and just really thinking about what impact do I want to have as a commissioner? I really was more forward thinking because that's what they want to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, they don't want to dig into your past. If your past isn't scandalous, they're not looking to, go all the way back to, your kindergarten teacher.
Right.
But they really want to know, what is your vision? And so I had to be really thoughtful and think about, okay, based off of what I've seen internationally with my work through NCAI, what I've seen with economic development there as well, the work that I've done at NIEA with Native languages, knowing that the Esther Martinez Native American Languages Grant was going to be part of the funding I was going to be responsible for. What is it that I wanted to be able to say we did in the next 4 to 8 years based on what I saw in the communities that I visited,
right,
based on conversations that I had, based on the consultations that I helped to facilitate. And then I think there was an advantage there too, just based on the work that I've done already in DC, that I was very familiar with congressional hearings. This was not the first time I testified.
Right, sure.
This was the first time I had a draft testimony or testify.
Right.
So I was comfortable sitting in front of people who were already very familiar with me.
And you had already met with a lot of those folks too. You were already, this takes months, right, of prep to do.
It does. It takes months of prep, of conversations with individual offices, with staff, with the senators, with the elected officials, with the administration. And at this level, they really do. I had neighbors that said, Lillian, the FBI contacted me. Is everything okay? And I said, yeah, talk to them. It's fine. It's for a job.
Yeah.
And what I realized is, like, you give your references, and what they do, well, I don't want to give away trade secrets, but my references were asked for additional references. So people who I didn't talk to and warn were saying, like, FBI was showing up on their job and asking about me. And I was like, talk to them, please. Everything is fine, I promise you.
What's funny is going through that clearance process, the last clearance I've had to do, it was at the National Center, and FBI showed up at the National Center. And they were, come to the main office, and they're like, I'm FBI, I just have some questions about Chris James. And like everybody, it was like a big sort of, and it was a secret with what was going on at the time for me anyway, so no one really, you're not really supposed to talk about what's going on. And so it was a little hectic for a minute because people were like, what's he doing? And I finally, once I was confirmed for that particular job, I was able to say what was going on. But all of the information that they ask, and even, any tickets you've gotten from, like I had, every address for 10 years. So I get that. So you get confirmed in, was it 2009, 10?
So it was in 2000, it was actually 2011, I think, at that time. Wait, so it was 2010. It was 2010. It was 2010.
So you're the commissioner of ANA.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things that you mentioned the implementation of the one program. What other accomplishments do you feel like you did under your leadership there?
So we were able to establish the first ever ACF tribal consultation policy.
That's right.
And then create an ACF tribal advisory committee. And through that, it required the agency, which was Administration for Children and Families, which is where ANA is housed at Department of Health and Human Services, to hold these annual consultations across all of their programs. It was incredibly effective and actually very efficient versus individual offices trying to hold separate consultations. We created new grant programs as well. We had the NCAIED, which was Indigenous Native youth program that allowed us to really focus and pour money into economic and entrepreneurial training and development for young people. We had the SEEDS program, which was really about shovel-ready projects, sustainable economic and educational development for tribal communities. We had a broader Native language program as well. The community learning program, which allowed for 5 years of funding for tribes or communities that had some gaps in their Native language learning. And that came from a visit where I saw the Head Start and the K-5 school had Native language immersion activities, but there was no middle school.
Right.
And so there'd be a gap. The high school offered it, and even the tribal college. And so it allowed communities to fill those gaps. So if a parent determined that from the womb to post-secondary graduation, they wanted their kid to learn all in the Native language, it could happen.
Yeah.
And we increased the budget. We increased it to the highest levels at that time, which was $52 million. We were able to make an impact by bringing together a Native language cohort where we had conferences for ANA that would focus specifically on this type of work. We did research, we developed new policy, and we were able to elevate the office of ANA to a deputy assistant secretary position within ACF.
That's
so
amazing.
The commissioner had 2 roles.
You know, the language piece is such a key, because that was the time too in the late 90s and 2000s, the immersion schools started, even back home in Cherokee, but the immersion schools, like you mentioned, it would stop at a certain time and then you would get in, and that was where a lot of that language, even if the kid from birth to 5 years old in the immersion schools, they were speaking the native language, when they got to the next, there wasn't another phase. So I think what a critical, it's almost like a gap that you filled. So that's pretty amazing there. All those, that was such an exciting time in DC, and I remember we first met during that time too. I was at, I think we met when I was at SBA.
Yes.
And some of the work, just all of our interagency working groups, we were together, and we, that just it was a good time, to do, and I just think when I look back, it's a lot different now, and even in different administrations. And I don't know if it was because we were there and, it was like, this is how we did it, but I worked with the Biden-Harris transition team. Even on Trump 1, I was even on a board through the FCC. It was just different in all those times. But the 8 years for Obama was just an exciting time in DC.
It was. There was a lot of really positive and productive energy, right? Yeah. We were able to be in a position where we could say, okay, what's next? We've done this. Yeah. What else do we want to do? Versus trying to defend and keep programs. Yeah. And there's a lot of energy wasted in here in DC when there's a budget cut, and both sides of the aisle do it, both in any administration does it. They have to make some budget cuts and programs. But I always say it's a false win when they zero out a line item for Indian country, and then we spend a tremendous amount of time and resources getting it back to where it was the year previous, and then saying that's a win. It is a win in the sense that it's not at the zero, but but we've spent a lot of time just getting what we've already had, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these programs are really supposed to be an extension of self-determination and our treaty rights. And so for us to have to continuously spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in DC and lots of time and manpower here, walking the halls to get our probes at levels that are still not adequate enough to meet the needs back in our tribal communities, it can be a little disheartening.
Yeah.
And so, I'm always excited when I see plus ups in the budgets because it means that our friends on the Hill are listening to us and they understand. Or when I see a new program that the administration is pushing forward or promoting, new initiatives, then it makes me happy because it reminds me of what the possibilities are versus, again, just the defense stance that we typically have to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think seeing that success and seeing those, it's such an education too. I mean, we're constantly educating about programs. We're constantly educating about what is sovereignty. We're constantly educating, and it seems like it never ends. If it's administration or people on the Hill, but it's, it is keeping the ball moving down the court and making sure folks understand, and having advocates like you is so critical because of just your overall experiences and knowledge you're bringing to the table.
Well, thank you. I mean, Chris, you've been incredible as well. And I love watching your leadership at the national and international level for the National Center, and all the ways you have grown our programming, our training, our outreach, our support, making sure that Natives and Indigenous people are included, they're at the table, they're at these roundtables, that we're centered in these conversations. It's been a lot because of the advocacy and your visibility and making sure that people understand that the National Center is here, that Indigenous economies are strong, that oftentimes we can really be the model in terms of how to get things done correctly and efficiently and effectively, and just opening those doors. So thank you, Chris, for that.
Well, it's been a wonderful journey, and having those partners is key. So let's talk now. Were you in the Obama administration for the full
for
8
both
years?
terms?
For both terms, yeah, me too. Yeah, 8 years.
Yeah.
So after that, what was next for you?
I always knew I was going to open up my own shop.
Okay.
I always knew that. That was the plan. And so I got out of the administration literally, it was 2 weeks before the election.
Okay.
And so, and I'm glad that's when it happened, only because I had ran into people that I worked with, the colleagues, that 18 months later were still trying to land something because of the turnover. And one of my professional mentors, Vicky Vasquez, took me under her wing. And she said, okay, Lillian, you're gonna come to Tribal Tech, you're gonna learn the business of how to run an 8A program and how to do government contracting, and then you're gonna do it for yourself as well. And so that's really what happened. She was my first client, and then was my first partner where we subbed with Tribal Tech on a couple of federal contracts. And I was trying to think of what was I going to name my company, and so Wopila Consulting is what it's called. And for those that don't know the Lakota language, Wopila is our most formal way of saying thank you. There's different expressions, but Wopila is the proper formal way. And so just trying to think of what I was going to call it, and my husband said, "Well, what is it that you put in your emails again?" He's non-native, and I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, when you end your emails, you have something in there. I said, Wopila? He was like, yes. What is that? And I was like, oh, that's actually a great idea, because all the blessings I've received in my career and in my life, the gratitude that I have for people who have just supported and poured their knowledge into me and their trust into me, I wanted to be able to do that back, to express my gratitude in that way. And I'm doing that through the work I'm doing at Wopila.
That's amazing. And so now Wopila has, well on a journey. You've been in business for almost a decade.
Almost,
now.
I know. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that journey as an entrepreneur, because it is way different from what you've done, as the story we've heard already today. Now you're another risk
Yes.
that you're taking. You're now like, okay, I'm on this entrepreneur route. This is how I'm going to do it. What's that journey been like?
Well, first, it's been very interesting, ups and downs, twists and turns. Being an entrepreneur is not for the faint at heart. I will say that. But it is for those that have a strong belief in the work that they're doing and have a great connections in circles that can help them identify where the work is. And there's plenty of work to be done. So, which I didn't realize until then. I was public service up until I started working for myself. I said my first private job is when I worked for myself. And you really begin to see the opportunities in a different way. And it's not as scary in the sense of not knowing where your next client or where your next contract's coming, but it is in being able to maintain the work and making sure that you are meeting the needs of those that you are serving. And so it's still a very service-minded business, the way that I do it. I still run it as we have to meet the needs of this community, that we have to meet the needs of this client, and we have to do it in a way that makes sense for them and allows us to feel good about the work we're doing. And but I've learned a lot. I don't have an MBA, and I keep kicking myself like I should just. I don't want to take any more exams, but I'm like I should audit some MBA classes.
Yeah.
And some of it is trial by fire, and some of it, you realize you're going to make mistakes, but you have to learn quickly from those mistakes, forgive yourself from whatever misstep you think you saw or oversaw, and make sure you do it correctly the next time.
Yep. And both of us have done something very well in our careers where we've maintained really good relationships. So you mentioned Vicky. I mean, that was a relationship you had already had, for a while as a and that helped get work and start working with her. You probably continued a lot of relationships from your past. Talk a little bit of the importance of building those networks and relationships.
Sure. DC is all relationship-based and network-based. And I think a lot of it is because people are coming here into our nation's capital doing similar work. So it's really easy to find your own community of professional colleagues that you're able to, have fun with, but also do business with. I think it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it correctly and if you're doing a good job, you'll continue those relationships because they're also going to want to, brainstorm or workshop ideas with you. And then you'll be able to do the same with those folks. And I always tell people, when people in DC ask, what do you do? It's not a pretentious question. It is literally like, how can I help you? How can you help me? It is not, I do this, I'm so important. It's like, oh, you work at USDA?
Yeah.
My college roommate was there. Do you know this person? Oh, that's so funny. Okay, so what program are you working on? Oh, I know. So have you, and it's literally, it is a conversation starter because
that's right.
You find out what those networks are based off of really what profession are you working here in DC.
Yeah.
And, but it's important to maintain them that, you're not always going to agree with your colleagues. You're not always going to agree with people who are working on similar policy, but you have to find what is the common ground?
Yeah.
What can we agree to work on? And we're going to agree to disagree on this particular point issue.
Right.
You can't change my mind about this. I am not looking to change your mind. But we can work together on making sure we're uplifting tribal communities, that we are protecting sovereignty, that we are recognizing our cultural and traditional ways in a way that is respectful, and that we're promoting policy and visibility of Indigenous communities.
Yeah.
So if you can find what the common ground is, then it's really easy to continue to build and maintain those networks. And I don't think everything is worth dying, on like throwing yourself on the stake, or I'm not going to die on that mountain. I'm just not that person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to agree with you on everything, and you don't have to agree with me on everything, but we do have to respect our differences of opinions and find ways to move forward.
Yeah. You're also very humble, which is a quality that I've, a lot of times in DC, you're rarely the most important person in the room until you are the most important person in the room. And I remember, a lot of times you would be the only, in some of these meetings we would do, and you, even just in general, you would be there and you were probably the highest level, with the Senate confirmed and everything. and just how humble, and you took it all in, and you are just so professional in networking, but also not making anyone feel that they're lower than you. And that is a skill that you've always had, and it's still have, and so I think, seeing that through the years has been so, just inspirational even for me. I was like, I want to be like her because of that. You're just always just humble and genuine. And I think that's a skill that's not everybody has.
Thank you. I credit that to my, parents and how I was raised and my family, to see the humanity in everybody and to understand everyone's story and background shapes them and gets them to where they are today. And I don't believe, I know there are titles and positions and roles, but I don't believe in like that classist hierarchy in the sense like, well, I'm not doing that, or I'm not, if work needs to be done, like we all have to do it together. That's how it gets done.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that, Chris, and I hope to be able to convey that to my son and younger people that I come across, that the way that we're able to continue building relationships and doing good work is if we recognize we all have a role to play and we should be doing this together. And what you said though is it's funny to me. It reminds me of when I was in the administration, and in my agency, I was the only Senate confirmed person there. And, we had car services that would take us to our meetings. And I always felt I was always getting bumped from the car. Like they would say, oh, Lillian, this person has to go there. And then until finally one of the drivers said, Ms. Sparks, you do know you are the highest ranking person in this agency. And you can bump them. They might think they can bump you, but for me to you, the next time you need a ride, you call me directly, and I'll make sure that the people understand they can't bump you, you bump them. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? Thank you for putting that in perspective for me. Exactly. Because now, while I might be younger or like less experienced, only because they had been doing this for like decades and decades at this time. This is not their first administration. They worked in Clinton administrations and previous administrations. But don't take that for granted. And so that is the only time you might see me, peacock a little bit, is when I start to see it being taken for granted.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I love this conversation. I love your journey. Talk a little bit, now you're on a bunch of boards, including the National Center Board. You have a great focus on youth and do speaking at various events. Talk a little bit about your board work and why that's continued to be important to you.
So having served a board as an executive director, I remember leaving that job saying, I never want to work for a board of directors again. Having 12 bosses is a lot. And they were great. It was a great board. It wasn't a difficult board, but it just was a lot to answer to. And so when I was first asked to join a board of directors, my goal, and it remains to this day, is to show as much support for the CEO or the executive director or whatever the title might be of the person who's actually leading the organization, and understanding what my role is versus what the staff role is. And as a board of director, a member of the board of directors, it is to set the vision and make sure that the strategic plan is aligned with the mission and the vision of the organization, and to help raise money and to help promote visibility. And the staff really does the implementation. Like we say, this is the strategy, this is the vision, and they make it work. It is not to do the day-to-day. It is not to, do the micromanaging. Certainly we have a fiduciary duty, but it is really to make sure that the organization is successful. And I enjoy board work. I love board leadership. I love hearing the ideas from the different board members about how to advance the mission of whichever organization it is that I'm serving on. I do recognize, though, that as much as I love board work, that I have to balance it with the work that pays me. And then with the family that supports me. And it's really trying to figure out how to promote it. So I'll say this part. So for me, board work is also a lot about it's limited, which I love, or it should be limited. And how do I do the work right here, right now, so that people that come in this seat after me can pick up and go even further.
Yeah.
It allows you to think in those terms versus, how you have to think as a business owner or how you have to, or as a nonprofit leader. You are really able to think much broader and much bigger because you know that incredible people are coming after you to pick up the baton where you left off. So I enjoy serving on the National Center Board and the other boards, and I'll just go ahead and shout them out real quickly.
Please do.
I'm currently the chair of the Native Forward Scholars Fund. We provide over $14 million in scholarships to Native students every year. I'm on the American Indian Science and Engineering Society board. I'm a brand new board member there. I really enjoy that particular conference and seeing all of they call themselves the Indian nerds out there that are doing incredible work that I wasn't able to tackle. I serve on the American Indian Cancer Research Foundation board, or ACAF as it's called, and the incredible work that's humbling that's doing, impacting real families, real patients, and helping them battle one of the most crippling diseases that's out there.
That's amazing. And you also are leadership in these board positions. So you mentioned you're chair of Native Forward, which is pretty awesome, and you're vice chair of the National Center.
And I'm vice chair of the National Center.
Great.
Yes. So
that's great. I'm also on a good number of boards, and I have that same philosophy. I would never want to get too much in the weeds, only because I've been on both sides. And I think, that is so important for, good advice for people that are thinking about, how do I get involved with boards? You get involved with boards because you can help move that mission, that support that organization. Don't get involved with boards just to pad your resume, because that's one of the things. I'm very cautious if I accept a board, because I can't be on really a working board.
Right.
I just have with the National Center work, and it's just a lot to try to be on a working board. But if I can be on a board that I can help guide and help get the organization to the next level, I'm all for it.
Exactly. And that should be our role. That should be our role as a board,
yeah.
is we get to be, the dreamers. We get to be a little bit more lofty in what it is that we want to see happen, and then temper it with the real work that's being done at the staff level. We can say what we can and can't do. So I think it's a great balance, and I do enjoy the board work, and I enjoy mentoring people to, again, fill my position once I leave those boards.
So what is next for you? You've had this awesome, career so far. I feel like it's just the beginning with the company, the consulting work you do, the board. What's next for Lillian Sparks Robinson?
Well, continue to grow Wopila Consulting and the work we're doing as it relates to advocacy, policy, organizational leadership, government contracting. And then I am also leaning into a lot of the public speaking that I'm doing and facilitation. I really enjoy that. I love going and meeting and visiting and talking with people. At Res every year, I say I'm the Indian Oprah, because I get to go on stage and moderate panels and meet people and ask questions. I don't get to say, you get a car, you get a car, but maybe one day we'll have things at the table, and I can say, you get a hat.
Yep.
But I enjoy those, pulling the stories out of people. And I know you love it too.
I do.
And also we have a really cool, incredible, exciting venture that I'm part of called the Indigenous Fashion Collective. So I have founded that alongside my co-founders, Sarah Eaglehart and Twyla True, who are two amazing Oglala Lakota women. And we are having our second gala, which will be at the Autry Museum October 11th.
Great.
And we're really excited about what we're hoping to be able to announce and share in the upcoming weeks.
Great, and we can put that information in the link for the October 11th event. I would love to be there, and I want to be there. When you are usually you do the women's business panel, or usually. I think it's an empowerment panel, because you're usually always on the first day of Res, and throughout the week too. But you bring so much energy. That's why it doesn't matter if you have 3 people on your panel or 1 person on your panel. it's always a crowd pleaser, and it is like Oprah. I mean, it is really good, and you get information, from people that, it just really highlights them, and I just great. That'll be your spot as long as you want it, and as long as you want to build it. It's fun to be on a stage with 2,000 people in the audience. That's
yes,
for sure.
It is. Every year, I brought my son Connor 2 years ago, and he was super impressed. Like, wow, Mom, okay. I had no clue that this is some of the stuff that, I said, I know. So now you understand why Mommy has to, leave home sometimes. This is the work that I do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and even your mom comes to Res and
every
helps
year.
out too. She's great too.
My mom and my aunt come every year.
They help out and help make that event. I know it's crazy how quickly an hour goes by. So, but I do want you to talk. And you've sort of merged this in a little bit. But what is your advice? At this stage of your life, you have family, you have consulting, you have all of these things going on. What is your advice to people to how do you stay grounded, and how do you, stay energetic, and how do you stay balanced?
Well, for me, my Lakota ways is my foundation. And that is how I'm able to stay grounded. I have to remember our Lakota values of wisdom, bravery, generosity, and fortitude. And those are called like our 4 directions. And so I use those 4 directions to keep me grounded, to keep me whole, to remind me what particular value I need to lean in on any particular time. And prayer. That allows me to not be stressed, to not be worried, again, to lean into the faith versus the fear of what's going to come, but just to have faith that it's going to be, whatever I'm going through at that moment in time is going to be even bigger and better for me. Something else is waiting for me on the other side. How I stay balanced, I tell women, young women, that come to me all the time, how can I do this? How can I do that? Can you have it all? And I say, you can have it all, but it's not all at the same time. There's a time and a season for different things that you're hoping to accomplish in your life. You can be a career woman. You can go after the profession that you want and be successful. And you can have a family that you love and spend a lot of time with. But it is about prioritizing what is the most important focus for you in that particular time in your life. And so for me, balancing my family, which is my priority, with my profession, it comes easy because I know that I can't be happy in my job if I'm not happy at my home. And I know my son, who will be 11 next month, time flies. I know, I really can't believe it, that I don't have forever with him under my care. It feels like, even now he tells me what he wants to do versus me telling him. So I, my husband and I, we have, a limited time to really shape and mold and prepare him to be an adult, to make great decisions. And so we make that time and we prioritize that. But I also know that I prioritize my business, that if I don't do it, no one else will, because no one else can. It is my business. It is Wopila Consulting. My culture, that's just within me, is inherent. And so I take that with me everywhere I go and every place that I travel. So it's really just leaning in and determining the priorities for yourself and not letting other people determine that for you.
Lillian Sparks Robinson, thank you so much. How inspiring words. I'm sure our listeners were writing things down as you talked today. You are an inspiration. You empower people everywhere you go. Thank you for being part of the Native Edge podcast. Thank you for being part of the National Center. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for being my friend. I appreciate our conversations every single time.
Absolutely. You are someone I rely on way too much.
No.
Those calls, I send a text, I'm like, can you talk for 5 minutes? So thank you. And thank you to our viewers and listeners. We are the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can find us on the web. You can find us on social media. look for ways to support not only our organization, but other nonprofits that Lillian had mentioned as well. Thank you so much to our viewers and listeners. Until next time on The Native Edge.
Take care.